As well. Let's start with the fast left pattern. As you start the Fantoon fight, the first thing you should pay attention to is what direction he moves after he phases in. Since we have fast left selected, he's going to move left every single time. But in a real run, he could move left or right. The fast patterns, he's going to open his eye more or less immediately after starting to move, roughly 1 second. As long as you're positioned in the right spot here on the floor, you can time your shot accordingly to clear most of the flames as they come out of Fantoon when he opens his eye. If you don't shoot here, flames will come out in a ring and expand throughout the majority of the room. So it's important to learn the timing for each of these shots, in addition to the position that you want to be in for each of these shots. Additionally, Fantoon will drop a different number of flames as he's moving throughout the room. This can also be customized here in the Fantoon RNG control menu, down next to the bottom. You'll want to perform this fight many times repeatedly to get a feel for how to deal with different patterns of flames, in addition to different patterns of Fantoon opening his eye. After clearing the flames as they come out in a ring, you'll want to select missiles. Shoot Fantoon twice, and then wait. If you shoot Fantoon 3 times here, he'll disappear immediately. You need to shoot Fantoon twice before he starts moving, and then twice after he starts moving to start the fight. Additionally, you should focus on trying to collect drops from the flames that were destroyed. Before we get into the specifics of how Dopplers work with Fantoon, we should cover each Fantoon pattern so that you know how to engage Fantoon as he opens his eye so that he doesn't have a chance to disappear. If you don't shoot him at all after he opens his eye, he will disappear. So it's important to make sure that we get that first set of missiles in so that he doesn't have the opportunity to disappear on us. If Fantoon does disappear before you're able to hit him with missiles, he'll start another pattern, but it will be invisible. This means that even if you get the fast pattern, if he disappears, he may not give you another fast pattern. It may switch to a mid or a slow, costing you lots of time. Now that we've discussed fast left, let's discuss mid left. As Fantoon starts moving throughout the room, you want to assume that the faster pattern is going to happen. This is because if you're expecting a mid pattern, but you got a fast pattern, and you didn't shoot for it, he would open his eye before you were expecting it, you would get hit by flames, and then he would likely disappear. So even though we know that this is going to be a mid left, we're going to shoot here anyway, as if it were a fast left. Since he doesn't give us a fast left pattern, we want to deselect our missiles after having selected them. You can do this by either pressing item cancel or switching off of them. As Fantoon continues to move around the room, you'll want to clear the flames as they drop. This is the mid-left pattern. What I like to do is position myself so that Samus's arm cannon is positioned upward just to the right of this green dot in the background. Then shoot as Fantoon is swinging up and around into the mid-pattern position. Switch to missiles and shoot the 2 missiles immediately after your first shot, again to prevent Fantoon from disappearing. After he starts moving, shoot him with the second set of 2 missiles. Sometimes a flame will be on the ground and will eat one moving, again to prevent immediately after your first shot, again to prevent Fantoon from disappearing. After he starts moving, shoot him with the second set of 2 missiles. Sometimes a flame will be on the ground and will eat one of your missiles. This is something that you'll have to adjust to as you do the fight more and get used to it. If you think that a flame is going to eat your missile, it's a good idea to shoot 3 missiles instead of just 2, so that you can still try to get 2 missiles in before Fantoon starts moving. Do be aware though that if a flame does not eat one of your missiles, and you shoot 3, he'll just disappear like that. Speaking of managing flames as they bounce around the room, something that's worth noting is that these flames are considered projectiles. And Samus's projectiles interact with enemy projectiles in a pretty strange way. I have a video covering this topic specifically, but I'll give a little crash course here. In the practice menu, we have this sprite features section. And at the bottom of this, we have a 32 by 32 projectile boxes option. Let's turn all 3 of these on so that you can see how things look. You can see that Samus's shot, as it passes through the room, has a box following it around. The flames have their own boxes as well. Essentially, the way that the game detects a projectile collision is based on this 32 by 32 grid. If Samus's projectile is in the same box on the grid as an enemy projectile, it's considered a hit. However, there can be some situations where it looks like the P shot or another beam should have hit one of these flames, but it doesn't because it's not technically in the same box. So keep that in mind as you're learning how to deal with these flames as they're bouncing around the room. So again, this is the left mid pattern. Now let's talk about slow left. Slow patterns are a pain in the butt to deal with because Fantoon takes longer to open his eye and he's dropping flames constantly as he's flying around the room. This means that oftentimes there are going to be flames in the way when you're trying to be in position to shoot as he's opening his eye. Sometimes this is avoidable, and sometimes it's not. Just like with the mid-left pattern, we want to assume that the faster pattern is going to happen. So there, we didn't get the fast left, so now we're going to assume a mid-left. We didn't get the mid-left, so now we know it's a slow left. The slow pattern ends up back close to the middle of the room, and it takes 10 to 11 seconds for Fantoon to get there from the time that he starts moving until he opens his eye. We're going to assume the fast left. Now we're going to assume the mid left. Now we know it's a slow left. I like to position under and to the right of this yellow dot in the background for the slow left pattern. Not a fast left. Not a mid left, so we know it's a slow left. And just like with the other patterns, shoot 2 missiles, wait for him to move, then shoot 2 more. One more time. Not a fast left. Not a mid left, so we know it's a slow left. Now that we've covered the left pattern positions, let's cover the right pattern positions. We'll start with fast right. So at the beginning of the fight, you want to position in the same spot in the room. Just like with the left pattern, the fast right comes out almost immediately. You want to shoot your first P shot as Phantoon is up and to the right after his eye starts passing the green dots. 2 missiles, wait for him to move, 2 more. Pretty straightforward there. Now let's talk about mid-right. The mid-right position is very similar to the 2 more. Pretty straightforward there. Now let's talk about mid-right. The mid-right position is very similar to the fast left position. Because of this, you can just stay standing in the same spot that you started in at the beginning of the fight. You may need to move around to collect drops from the flames, or to avoid getting hit by a flame. But other than that, you want to stay in generally the same spot that you started in. Also, just like with the left patterns, we want to assume a fast right. Since it's not a fast right, we hope for a mid-right. And now let's talk about slow right. So assume the fast right, we don't get it. Assume the mid right, and we don't get it. You should take that opportunity to collect the drops around the room, and then position under this yellow dot in the background for the final shot. No fast right. No mid right. Slow right. No fast right. Slow right. So that covers it for round 1. Now let's move on to round 2. A couple of notes about these round 2 plus patterns. Left versus right patterns in round 2 plus refers to the side of the screen that Phantoon starts on, as opposed to the direction that he moves in. Again, in round 1, Phantoon started in the middle of the screen, so it would make sense to differentiate left versus right based on which direction he moves. But in round 2, he'll start either on the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen, which is what these are referring to. Additionally, if you pause as the second round or third, fourth, fifth, etc. round patterns are happening, that can actually invert the way that Phantoon moves. So when he would normally start in the top left of the screen, he would start in the bottom left instead. It's best not to pause during the fight if it can be avoided. But if you want to practice those patterns, that's what this second phase invert option is for. One thing to note is that round 2 does have 6 different patterns, just like round 1 does. All of these patterns are also applicable to rounds 3, 4, 5, etc. Although there are 6 different patterns that can occur in round 2, 2 of these have a very, very low percentage chance of occurring. Those 2 being mid-left and fast right. It's still important to know how these patterns work, but the likelihood of encountering them in a run is pretty small. So all of that being said, let's start with fast left.
They don't believe how toxic this is.
For round 2, you want to start on the right side of the room. I like to position Samus so that her toe is just over this line that is in between these two sets of yellow dots on the floor. This puts you in a good position to deal with what would hopefully be a fast left pattern. Just like with the first round patterns, you want to try to shoot at a specific time from a specific position to clear the flames as they come out of Phantoon in the ring pattern. Just like in round 1, the same missiles rule applies. So you can shoot 2, and then you need to wait for Phantoon to move. Then you can shoot 2 more. If you shoot 3 missiles immediately, Phantoon will disappear like that. Two, then 2 more. So that's the fast left pattern. Let's move on to mid left. Again, this pattern is pretty rare, so the likelihood of seeing it in a run is pretty low. Just like with fast left, we start on the right side of the screen. And just like in round 1, we assume or hope that Phantoon is going to give us the faster pattern. When he doesn't, we need to be ready for the next pattern, even though it's more of a rare pattern. This position is pretty similar to round 1 left fast. I like to position myself on the right side instead of the left side, because of how it makes it easier to hit Phantoon with additional missiles to try and finish the fight. Now let's cover round 2 plus slow left. Just like with the slow patterns in round 1, the slow patterns in round 2 are pretty difficult to deal with. Phantoon will drop a lot of flames as he flies around the room, and oftentimes they'll drop in such a way that it makes it difficult to clear the flames as they come out in a ring when Phantoon is ready to stop. For the slow left pattern, Phantoon will end up on the very far left side next to the wall. I recommend standing about 1 tile away from the wall. One thing that some people do is intentionally take damage from one of the flames just before Phantoon is ready to open his eye on the left side, and then simply jump up through the ring of flames. This would be a fast. This would be a mid. Since he didn't give us either of those, we know it's going to be a slow. Now let's move on to the right side patterns. Round 2 plus fast right is the rarest Phantoon pattern. Personally, I've only seen it in runs a handful of times over the 7 to 8 years that I've been playing this game every single day. That being said, you still want to be ready for it. Just like with the left pattern, we want to start on the right side of the room. If you see that Phantoon has spawned on the right, it's best to take a step forward and then do an upshot to try and clear all of the flames. From there, since we're assuming a fast pattern, you want to immediately shoot at least 1 missile. Many times, people will be caught off guard by this pattern, fail to shoot the missiles, and then Phantoon will simply disappear. One more. Next up, we have round 2 plus mid-right. This is a lot of people's favorite second round pattern. It's easy to deal with, and it's pretty common too. So for a mid-right, again, we want to assume that the fast is going to be the pattern, even though it's extremely rare. Assuming that the fast doesn't happen, you then just want to move slightly left and position right around here with an angle aim up to the right. And then shoot Fantoon as he's swinging down into the bottom right corner of the room. From there, it's the same. 2 missiles, wait, 2 more missiles. And that's it. Pretty straightforward pattern. Okay. One more pattern to learn, and then we can get into actually doing the Doppler fight. So here's how slow right works. Like usual, assume that Fantoon is going to open earlier rather than later. If he doesn't give you the mid-right, he's kind of being a troll for a couple of reasons. One, the mid-right is pretty much just as common as the slow right. And 2, the slow right is much harder to deal with than the mid-right. Similar to the slow left, it gives Fantoon more opportunity to drop flames around the room, which can be a pain to deal with. Also, many times, there will be flames in the way when you need to hit Fantoon with the missiles after he opens. Personally, I have better luck with slow right than slow left, but it's still annoying when it's the pattern that you're given, just because mid-right is such a common pattern. Also, watch out for that fast disappear. So just to break this down one more time, we assume the fast. We don't get the fast because it's extremely rare, so then we assume the mid. We don't get the mid, so we wait for the slow. No fast. Hope for the mid. No mid. Wait for the slow. And that's all of the Fantoon pattern positions. Okay, so how does Dopplering Fantoon work? Well, in order to understand Dopplering Fantoon, you need to understand how Dopplers work to begin with. I did cover this in my speedrun basics and general movement tutorial, so if you're looking for a detailed breakdown, I would suggest watching that section of that video. The short version is that when Samus is moving forward, her forward speed is added to the speed of the projectile that is being shot. So if we shoot a stationary missile, it's going to take longer to get to the wall than if we shoot a missile while running forward. Additionally, while this isn't important for the Fantoon fight specifically necessarily, when you fire a Dopplered shot, it comes out 1 pixel higher than a stationary shot. When it comes to Dopplering Fantoon, we're taking advantage of the extra speed on the missile to essentially stun lock Fantoon in place so that he's unable to escape and takes more missile damage before disappearing. In order for this to work, you need to be firing as close to the cooldown as you can between missile shots. Missiles have a cooldown rate of 10 frames. If you press the fire button on the 9th frame, it will buffer the shot to still come out on the 10th frame. However, if you do this 2 missiles in a row, so 9 frames, then 9 frames later, the missile will fail to come out in that case, because the second missile will be 2 frames early, not just 1. So it's best to get a feel as close to 10 frames as you can. The practice ROM has an info HUD menu called Shot Timer. This can help you gauge how quickly you're pressing the fire or the shot button. If you look in the top left, When firing, a value appears. This value is how many frames were between each shot. You want this number to be as close to 10 as possible without going below 10 when practicing Dopplering missiles on Fantoon. Because this game runs at 60 frames per second, that means that we can get 6 shots out per second. If you're wanting to learn the timing through a metronome, you would set it to 360 BPM, or slightly slower. I highly recommend taking advantage of the shot timer function in the practice ROM to get a feel for how quickly you should be pressing the fire button. For a normal Doppler setup on Fantoon, a 10 value, 11 value, or sometimes even a 12 value will be just fine. What I mean by a normal setup is that you would be firing while continuously running forward. We're not going to get into this quite yet, but there's also a way to stutter your Doppler. If you're going to be using stutter Dopplers, the value does need to be 10 as much as possible. Sometimes you may get lucky and an 11 will be okay, but most of the time, if it's higher than 10, your Doppler will break and Fantoon will disappear. Okay, so next we're going to cover how to use Dopplers against Fantoon in an actual fight, depending on which pattern you're given. This is going to change a little bit depending on which category you're running. The main differences being between Fantoon first routes, such as any percent and low percent runs, or Crade first routes, like the old any percent or 100% runs. Obviously, there are more categories than that. The main difference is whether you have high jump, speed booster, and how much damage you're going to take from Fantoon when you hit flames or Fantoon itself. So let's start with round 1 or phase 1. We've already talked about how to address each of these opening patterns, but what do you do from there? With the fast left, like we've already discussed, you do the 2 missiles, wait, and then 2 more missiles. In any percent, it's important that you collect any missiles that have been dropped and left behind after shooting your other missiles, so that you can try and replenish as many missiles as you can for the Doppler that you'll do to end the phase. So we start here with 12 missiles. And after doing 2 and then 2 more, we're down to 8. From there, you want to collect whatever's been dropped, and then make a decision on how many missiles you're going to fire for your Doppler. It's important not to deplete your missiles all the way down to 0 at the end of this phase, or you won't have anything to hit Fantoon with when he opens his eye in the next phase. So try to make sure that you have at least 1 missile left over. As far as how to handle the actual pattern, depending on how much energy you have, this can change, especially in any percent. We're starting the fight with 127 energy, and each hit we take from Fantoon or a flame is going to deal 40 damage to Samus, because we don't have a Varia or Gravity Suit. What this means is it's pretty easy to get in a precarious situation where we could actually die in the fight. So in Fantoon first any percent, or in Fantoon first low percent routes, there may be some situations where you need to prioritize not taking damage over dealing additional damage. For this left fast pattern, if you need to do that, after the pattern opens, you want to run into Fantoon immediately. If you let him bounce you backwards, like this, it's going to be harder to not take additional damage. So it's better to run into him, which will keep Samus on the ground. And then you can try and time a jump over Fantoon to avoid additional hits. You could also choose to just hit him with an extra missile and make him disappear immediately, if you're already in critical energy, for example. As far as the actual Dopplers go, many people like to send Fantoon off screen and then do the Dopplers as he's coming back on screen. This is a little slower, but it does give you more space to work with to get these Doppler missiles in. After taking damage, give you more space to work. This is a little slower, but it does give you more space to work with to get these Doppler missiles in. After taking damage, Phantoon moves in relation to Samus's position. This is especially important to keep in mind if you are going to throw Phantoon off screen, because if you move in the wrong way, he may come back on screen in a way that you're unexpecting, and you won't be able to hit him with your missiles. So you see here, I'm throwing him off screen, and then I do a jump. If we do the jump at the wrong time, he comes on screen in kind of a weird way. So it's important to make sure that you're timing your jump consistently. Another reason that doing the jump helps is it helps to gauge how long before he's going to come back on screen. If you stay on the floor the whole time, it's harder to gauge exactly when he's going to come back on screen. If you're doing the jump over to avoid damage, you need to consider that to be your jump. Because if you jump again, things are not going to go in the way that you're expecting, and it will be difficult to deal with. If you don't deal additional damage to Phantoon on his first swing back, he'll disappear before you're able to deal damage to him again. As far as the Dopplers themselves go, I already gave an explanation on how they work. You need to fire missiles as Samus is running forward or walking forward. You do not want to be holding the dash button during this. The missiles need to be spaced 10 frames apart. There's a little bit of lenience to this, but not very much. It's important to keep track of how many missiles are actually connecting with Phantoon, not just how many are being fired. As discussed previously, Phantoon has 2500 HP. This means we need to hit him with a total of 19 missiles and 1 super missile to finish the fight. If you hit Phantoon with a super missile early, what will happen is he'll go into this enraged state where he's invulnerable at the top of the screen. It takes about 20 seconds to clear this. So try not to hit him with a super missile until you know for sure that it's going to be the killing blow. As far as how many missiles you want to get in on the first round, a good running Doppler that doesn't involve any stutters.
Some dungeon entrances in Top Heroes are super.
If Phantoon was thrown off screen, you can get about 7 in. The way that this works is that you want to shoot a missile while Samus is still standing stationary next to the wall, and then start your walk forward while firing the subsequent missiles. Try not to hit Phantoon at the end of your Doppler. If that means getting 1 less missile in, that's okay. When you're practicing with the practice ROM, as long as the info HUD is set to enemy HP, you can see how much energy or how much HP Phantoon has left at the top left of the screen. So you can see here he's starting with 2500. Then I shoot 4 missiles, 2 and 2, which brings him down to 2100. From there, we do our Doppler, and we see that he now has 1400 because I got 7 in. Again, it's important to keep track of how many missiles you're hitting Phantoon with in the first round so that you can do some quick math to determine what exactly you need to hit him with in the second round to finish the fight. So that's typically how I would deal with a left fast under normal circumstances. One last thing to note here. We did talk briefly about stutter Dopplers before as well. The way that this works is you'll fire a missile, then press forward and fire another missile, then release forward, repress forward, and fire another missile. You can do this repeatedly to save on distance that is being traveled during the Doppler. However, it is pretty risky, because if you mess it up early, there's a chance that you're only going to get 1 or 2 missiles into Fantoon before he disappears. Some people prefer to do their stutters at the end of the Doppler, like so. Some people prefer to do their stutters at the end of the Doppler, like so. So that's Dopplering Fantoon for a round 1 left fast. The rest of these patterns should be a bit easier and faster to cover, since we don't necessarily need to go over all of the additional details. Let's move on to mid-left. One small thing that I didn't cover in the left fast. Depending on the pattern, you may feel more or less comfortable with the idea of doing your Doppler on Fantoon before he has a chance to fly off screen. Mid-left is one of the patterns that I like to do on screen. So let's talk about that first. So what I like to do, as I mentioned before, I like to handle the pattern from below. Shoot 2 and 2, and then immediately Doppler to the left before he has a chance to go off screen. You can also throw him off screen like that. And depending on the flame patterns, things may change. If there are drops to collect, you can prioritize collecting those for either an on-screen or an off-screen pattern. But the key here is getting used to how Fantoon is going to move, depending on how you move Samus. If there aren't flames in the way, what I like to do is run left and then jump immediately after the opener. This will manipulate Fantoon in a way that we can easily avoid damage and put him in a good position to do the on-screen Doppler. If you find yourself in a situation where Fantoon is flying around the room and you're full on missiles, but he's still dropping flames, it's a good idea to dump one of your missiles so that more missiles will drop as more flames are destroyed. This isn't as much of an issue for the flames coming out of the ring as it is for flames that are dropped on the floor. So see how I was full on missiles, but these still dropped. However, if we're full on missiles here, no matter how many flames we shoot, they're never going to drop any. And it's important to try and leave as many missile drops around as we can, so that we can try and come up with a game plan for round 2. If you're struggling with the on-screen Doppler, or Dopplers going to the left specifically or right specifically, you can try to adjust your strategy in a way that works for you. So for example, you could prioritize always throwing Fantoon off screen. Or never throwing him off screen. I have found that stutter Dopplers seem to work better with on-screen setups. Alright, so let's move on to round 1, left slow, or slow left. The slow patterns are one of the patterns that I prefer to always do on screens for. If necessary, you absolutely can do off screens for them though. Really, as with many things in this game, it's going to come down to comfort and consistency above everything else. And again, another thing that I already mentioned with Fantoon specifically, the best thing you can do is practice this fight a lot, so that you find different nuances to how to deal with different flame patterns, how to avoid damage consistently, and practice your Doppler technique. Okay, so we've covered the left patterns, let's cover the right patterns. Right fast is one of the patterns that I personally prefer to do on screen. It's also one of the patterns that can leave you without any missiles at the end if you're not careful. If you do prefer to throw Fantoon off screen, of course that's an option too.
I'm 35 and I want to retire by 50.
And again, if you're extremely low on energy, you'll always have the option to just end that round early and collect more energy and missiles. Next up, we'll cover mid-right. So again, this pattern is kind of similar to left fast. So if you've practiced left fast a lot, it's going to be very similar to that, except with more flame management. You can try to do this pattern on screen, but it is actually one of the patterns that I personally prefer to do off screen. Last piece here for round 1, or phase 1. We're going to do slow right. wall. And then start your walk forward while firing the subsequent missiles. And then start your walk forward while firing the subsequent and then start your walk forward while firing the subsequent missiles. Try not to hit Fantoon at the end of your Doppler. If that means getting one less missile in, that's okay. When you're practicing with the practice ROM, as long as the info HUD is set to enemy HP, you can see how much energy or how much HP Fantoon has left at the top left of the screen. So you can see here he's starting with 2,500. Then I shoot 4 missiles, 2 and 2, which brings him down to 2,100. From there, we do our Doppler, and we see that he now has 1,400 because I got 7 in. Again, it's important to keep track of how many missiles you're hitting Fantoon with in the first round, so that you can do some quick math to determine what exactly you need to hit him with in the second round to finish the fight.